Welcome to Look, Live, and Be Better, where we cover the hottest trends in health, beauty, and plastic surgery. I'm Dr. Anthony Yoon, America's holistic plastic surgeon. Well, have you heard of bone broth? Well, it's all the rage in Hollywood and is touted by many as being the ultimate anti-aging food. Celebrities like Gwyneth Paltrow, Salma Hayek, Shailene Woodley, and Kobe Bryant are big fans of bone broth. But what exactly is bone broth? How do you prepare it? And what are its actual benefits? Well, today I'm really excited to welcome someone who is an expert in bone broth and much, much more. My guest today is a board-certified naturopathic physician and a certified nutrition consultant. She did postgraduate work in Europe studying naturopathic medicine in England and Switzerland. She is one of the few practitioners in the United States certified in biological medicine by the esteemed Dr. Thomas Rau of the Paracelsus Clinic Lustmühle in Switzerland. She is also a regular guest on television shows, including The Doctors and Dr. Oz. She is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post and Mind Body Green. Well, she's considered a weight loss and natural anti-aging transformation expert. She has a private practice in the Birmingham, Michigan area, where I'm also from, and is a concierge doctor for celebrities in New York City and Los Angeles. But what does she have to do with bone broth? Well, she is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Dr. Kellyanne's Bone Broth Diet, and the newly released Dr. Kellyanne's Bone Broth Cookbook. You may have also seen her on her hit public television special, 21 Days to a Slimmer, Younger You. She is also the driving force behind the popular website, drkellyann.com. It is my privilege to welcome my dear friend and fellow Birmingham, Michigan resident, Dr. Bone Broth herself, Dr. Kellyann Petrucci. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Kellyann.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. Now, we met a couple years ago, and it's kind of an interesting story.
Yes.
Yeah, so when I started looking at producing my own public television special, I was referred to the person who I heard was like the best at producing these things. And they told me that they had just produced this smash hit show for public television with a Dr. Kellyann. And so I started looking into this Dr. Kellyann, and lo and behold, she lives partially in the same community that I do in Birmingham, Michigan.
Yes, I mean, it's a small world, you have to say. It really is.
So I looked you up and I thought, well, wait a minute here. You know, she's actually from Birmingham, Michigan, or she spends a certain amount of time there, and she owns this wellness practice that I've actually been to a bunch of times. It's like half a mile from my house. So now we become great friends, and yes. I tell you, I've learned a ton from you. I have read your books. I find them absolutely fascinating. That's why I was so excited to have you on the show, because, you know, there's not a lot of allopathic MD doctors that go out and really kind of promote alternative health and wellness, naturopathic physicians, and you're one of my favorite ones. So for me to have you on, it's an absolute privilege. Well,
I have to tell you, the feeling is mutual. I feel the same about your work, so thank you.
And I think what a lot of my listeners would love to hear, and the viewers here, is something that I know about, but a lot of people don't know, is you have practices all over. You've got a practice in New York, LA. Can you explain kind of what you do, who you see, and the types of things that you help people and treat them for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm rarely asked that, so I'm glad I had this opportunity. So when you hear this, it sounds like, oh my gosh, she's all over the place. But actually, I have it really figured out because I've been doing it for so long. I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years now, natural medicine and nutrition. And I love what I do. So for me, there's such a passion and there's such a drive to do all of this. And that's why I do. I mean, I have this practice in Birmingham, Michigan. I'm there about a week a month. And it's been such an honor to treat these patients. They come in with everything. They come in with inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions. They come in with thyroid issues. They come in because they cannot lose weight and they're tired of the fight. They're on medications they don't want to be on, and they're tired of the side effects. They come in because they have achy joints. They come in because they have skin problems. They come in because they're bloated all the time. They're constipated all the time. They have, chronic fatigue, like that fatigue that's deep fatigue. And the best way I can describe that, is if, women are out there and they've ever been pregnant and you get so tired when you're pregnant. It's a different kind of tired. So many people deal with that different kind of tired every day. They wake up after a night's sleep and they're still tired. They come in to see me because they can't sleep. They come in to see me because their hormones they feel like they're not themselves anymore. Their hormones just don't feel right. They come in to see me because, you know what? My skin's losing its luster and my hair is acting crazy and I feel like I'm getting bald, and I can go on and on. So I see a wide range of things.
Sounds like it.
A wide range of things. And I also see celebrities. I see a lot of TV people. I see a lot of people that you see on the big screen. I have the privilege of seeing them. I see them in Los Angeles and I see them in New York. And they have different kind of needs, but their needs typically boil down to the same thing.
Well, real quick, what percentage of your patients do you think are there really for weight loss? Like they have not been able to lose weight? I would say 85%. Now that was a progression. I have to tell you, Tony, it started out, I had a family practice. I saw children. I saw mothers. Then the mothers would drag the dads in, which is typically how it went. I saw everything. And I'm so happy that I had this opportunity because it really seasoned me. So there's a couple of things that seasoned me. That was one, spending all of those years with children, with teenagers. The mothers would bring their teenagers, to talk to me. Sometimes they would just have them talk to me, right? Because they need that sometimes. They talk about their health, talk about what's going on, and the mothers would come in because they were feeling tired or they couldn't lose weight anymore. They wanted their skin to look younger. That's a really big thing, as you know, is I want to stay looking young. How do I do this? I mean, that's what you live that. So then is it safe to say that your practice kind of started big and that as you have gone in practice, you've kind of more focused on the weight loss community, as time has gone on? Because yes, and here's why. Because there was such an interest to me that women had resistant weight loss. They had weight loss resistance, as we call it. And that to me was fascinating because I thought, gosh, why is this happening? There are answers. This is not necessary. It's not necessary. And I see women going through dramatic and drastic means to accomplish something that you don't need to go to those measures. So I would say all of those years of having that broad-based education with patients and then being trained in Europe, where I trained in London. I had the Swiss training through Dr. Rao at the Paracelsus Clinic. It was a very unusual way to practice, and I had many different type of modalities in front of me. There's only 2 Americans in our whole class. So I learned a lot about cultural nutrition. I learned a lot. So between these two things, having this diverse education, this European education, and having this broad-based practice scope, that I really feel that I come from a very different place than many practitioners. And I think, I see that in my practice all the time. I went through 4 years of medical school, 5 years of general and plastic surgery residency. I took a fellowship, yet I'd say probably half or more of my patients, one of their complaints is that they can't lose weight. And so I look at my allopathic medical background and what have I told them up until the last really year or two? Well, you count calories, it's calories in, calories out. Yet people tell me, look, I've done that. I've done Weight Watchers. I've done all of this. The only thing that has worked for me is if I go on an extreme no-carb diet and then I lose a bunch of weight, but I can't keep it off. So that's not realistic for some of them. It's not, but there's reasons why. Exactly. And so that's why I find what you have come out with, and your contemporaries too, absolutely fascinating. And so let's get into some of that, because I do think there's so many people who are watching, who are listening, who say, look, that's me. I feel like I eat okay. I follow the USDA guidelines and I eat so many servings of dairy and so many servings of meat and so many carbs. Why is it that I can't get weight off? Why does my skin look like this? So and if they say the USDA, I say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that you're paying attention to that, because that's the only answer I have, because that certainly has not served us. And this is not to bash anyone or anything other than to say that when you practice for a long time, you pick up
you pick up underpinnings and you pick up clues, and then you find common threads. Yeah. And a common thread that I found was those that stuck to those guidelines often were the ones that got the least value, the least results from anyone, from any program.
Yeah, and we see that too with a lot of skin conditions, with fibromyalgia. It's that sometimes, regular allopathic traditional medicine does fail patients. And so that's why I think, kind of what you have to share, I think is absolutely necessary for people to hear. So I kind of want to get into this because I do think it's super important that we get through, because I think so many people are going to get so much out of just spending the next, 20, 30 minutes with you here. So one thing that, and I've read your book, so I kind of, I'm going to kind of point you in a certain direction because I know kind of where you're coming from. But you say that there are two kind of silent or hidden reasons why people can't lose weight, or they have stubborn or resistant weight loss. So, of all these people who come in to see me and they say, look, I just can't lose weight. What are these two big reasons that you have found?
Well, I think the biggest one, and if this is probably the most important thing that I will say through this whole interview, and that is you must understand inflammation. Yeah. Inflammation is silent and deadly, and you have to be aware of this. And let me explain that when you hear the word inflammation, it's not always bad, because there's two types of inflammation. There's that acute inflammation, and that's that inflammation that comes into your body if you have a sore throat or if you break a bone. We want that. That inflammation that comes in there is short term. It does its job. It dissipates. It leaves the body, and it leaves you better for it. Yeah. But sometimes your body gets stuck on the on position. This is when you have chronic ongoing inflammation, and it's like a forest fire in your body that you just can't put out. And this, Tony, is when we have a big problem. This is the common underpinning to about every modern day disease that we see, including heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, and all of these autoimmune issues that we're seeing more and more common, more prevalent today. They're based on this underpinning of this chronic ongoing inflammation. So when you have inflammation, inflammatory cells, people have to really understand this. Inflammatory cells, inflammation begets fat, and fat begets inflammation. And it's this terrible cyclical cycle that really creates all kind of havoc in your body, including resistant weight loss. So we just have to understand that when you have this chronic ongoing inflammation, you are going to start a cycle. There's a hamster wheel that's going to happen. Inflammation begetting more fat cells begetting more inflammation. And it just goes on and on and on till you can break that cycle.
And it seems like, a lot of people say, okay, well, I can't lose weight because of genetics, and genetics, obviously affects all of us. Or I can't lose weight because I don't exercise. But what really it comes down to is what you put in your mouth. I mean, isn't that true?
So much more. Now, I want
everyone to cause that inflammation.
I want everyone to understand and really key into what I'm saying here. I have sat next to people, and they have spilled their diet out to me. You have to realize that the core foundation of what I've done for over 20 years has been listening to what people eat. Thousands and thousands of people, I've listened to what they've eaten, and they've sat before me, and I've seen the results. I run empirical data on everyone. Everyone that comes to see me, I know metabolically, I know from a chemical standpoint exactly what's happening, because I like the empirical data, because I like them to see how far they've come. So after the month goes by and we've gotten that inflammation wiped out of their body, I want them to see, look how it's changed everything. Yeah. It's changed every number. Yeah. You are now doing your body is now responding and reacting as it should to the stimulus it's receiving. And this is really important. So I would say that's number one. The number one reason why. A lot of women in particular, men included, but women in particular that come in and they say, oh my gosh, I'm a wreck. I'm not who I used to be. I don't know what's going on. All I know is I can't lose this weight. Yeah. And what they do, Tony, is they get on that cardio equipment and they go on and on. And I'm sorry to say, but that worsens the problem in many cases because it creates hormone hell. It really does. It creates a hormonal distraction and situation. So let's start first with understanding inflammation and knowing that if we're going to get this job done, the first thing we need to do is calm and quell that inflammation. So that's the first and most important.
Okay. And so what is the second then reason? So inflammation obviously is number one. And, we see it all the time too with patients who come in. I mean, I can tell a lot of times now, after I've been studying this for, I've been in private practice 12 years, somebody comes in and I can just, by looking at their skin, I have a pretty good idea of the type of food they're eating. I mean, it's crazy.
Absolutely. Well, let me just tell you, and let me just say this before I forget. An easy way to tell if you have this inflammatory situation, C-reactive protein. It's a non-invasive, easy blood draw that your practitioner can do. And if you're hearing these things and saying, I wonder if I have this, obviously you wouldn't know. The person listening or watching probably doesn't know if they have it. Mm-hmm. You can easily get this checked.
Yeah.
But I can tell you one of the biggest tells that we see, and it's also one of the most common things that we see in practice, are achy joints. Okay. Achy joints is a very big sign that you've got something going on. And also skin, inflammatory skin. There's so many things. Yeah. But it's so funny what you said, because what you do, when you do what we've done for so long, I go to an airport and you become like the bionic woman, mm-hmm. and you just can't help it. Yeah. And what we're looking for, and I can't help but to notice on people, and this brings me to my second point, is that your physiology and your chemistry doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. It doesn't lie. You can't hide it. Yep. So when you are eating things that create a pro-inflammatory lifestyle instead of an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, oh, you're going to see it. And, I'm so trained now because I look for this and I have scanned this on patients for so many years. I can pretty much tell. And now hear this, because this brings me to my second point.
Okay.
The state of their gut.
Okay.
So the second thing that people really have to understand and be aware of, and it ties into that inflammation, is do you have a healthy gut or do you have a sick gut? Mm-hmm. Because if you have a sick gut, I promise you, weight loss is going to be all the more harder. It's going to be much, much more difficult, because you have to think about this. You have to think that your intestines, you've got the 25 feet coiled up right here in this area. Just picture it as a narrow tube. Now picture that red and inflamed. Okay. Mm-hmm. So your intestines have to be rock solid, like a wall, rock solid like a wall. And over time, this inflammation wears down that wall. And that really creates a situation in which your body thinks you're at war. Mm-hmm. And it's a war. It doesn't want to fight, but it's fighting. And it shouldn't be fighting, because there really isn't a war. It's a fake war. And let me explain. So, you've got food particles and everything that are escaping through this wall. Mm-hmm. And then it sends out signals. A war is going on. The warriors come out. They come out and they fight this war. And this really creates a lot of illness and sickness, in our bodies. And this autoimmune problems that we're seeing more and more of, this is really one of the jump starts to all of this. So we need to keep those intestines lock solid. And the best way to do that is to have a healthy gut. And if you're eating modern day foods, if you've had a lot of prescriptions, if you've done a lot of NSAIDs, if you've done antibiotics, if you've eaten a lot of these modern day packaged crinkly foods, all of this, yeah, you probably do need some work on your gut. But here's the great news. Even if you're inflamed, even if you have a sick gut, there are solutions. There truly are solutions. There's solutions that work, and they can work rather quickly. And I call my diet a 21-day diet. And I talk about the bone broth, the program being 21 days. And that number is very deliberate. And the reason why I chose that number is because everyone should always feel hope for their health, and hope to be they should have so much hope that they're going to create whatever vision they have for themselves, because we are regenerating all of the time. We have this beautiful, powerful, innate system that's constantly working for us when we give it the right raw material. So your intestinal cells, Tony, turn over every 21 days. Yeah. So if you then, knowing this, feed your intestines the right raw material for 21 days, can you see then how you could build something completely different and build something healthy and strong, and that's going to serve you? So what for those people who are listening and watching, basically, if you've ever heard the term leaky gut, that's what Dr. Kellyann just pretty much explained, is that a leaky gut is a gut that allows a lot of the toxins and the food particles to actually microscopically get through some of the damaged lining of the intestine, and this creates that chronic inflammation, and that can once again then lead to all these various kind of chronic disease states. And we see it, it's interesting because people say, well, geez, I don't see my gut.
I mean, I see my mouth, and, obviously when I go to the bathroom, we look, what do we see? We see our skin. But when you actually think about it, the lining of the gut is so much more. The surface area of the lining of the gut is so much more than the surface area of the rest of your body that's exposed to the elements.
Yes.
So your actual gut is exposed to more of the outside world than the rest of your body. And I think that's something that people need to realize. And it's so important that what you then expose that inner lining of the gut to is extremely important in your health.
You really have to put that in the forefront of your mind a lot of times, and people wonder all the time, how do I really lose weight? And, there's one thing that everyone really that you have to really think about, and that's creating food values though, Tony. And we create values for everything in our life, whether we realize it or not. We're saying every time we say yes or no, it's based on a value. We say yes because of a value we have, no because of a value we have. And we really have to do the same with food. And one of the values that I ask people to think about is if you're going to eat something and it's going to damage your gut, understand, look, don't make it I'm cheating. No. You're making a choice, okay? You have to be really clear about this. These are my yeses, these are my nos. And 80% of the time, I'm going to eat super, super well. 20% of the time, I'm going to go out and I might have a drink, or I might have pasta, or I might have things that aren't perfect, but that's okay. And understand that, I'm not eating perfect, but I'm going to pull out some of my magic erasers. That's what I call them in practice. I'm going to pull out some of these powerful superfoods, these magical erasers that are going to help me recover. And I know that I can't do these things long term. I'm going to take the responsibility to know that I have enough food values to know that, I'm just going to go a little bit off plan right now, but I'm going to get right back on.
And that's one of the things that I loved about your book. I mean, real quick, this is her new book, Dr. Kellyanne's Bone Broth Cookbook. I've read it. I've got it. This is the follow-up to her New York Times bestseller. Fantastic book as well. This is one I would definitely encourage you to take a peek. And, really kind of what you said, there's so many people who say, look, I don't want to live the rest of my life just eating bark and twigs and stuff that doesn't taste good.
So unappealing, right?
Oh my gosh, you go through this and foods that you would think wouldn't be good for you. For example, fish and chips, sweet potato sausage hash, bacon-wrapped chicken tenders. You can actually make those and have them healthy and actually healing for your gut. So if you're interested, take a look at her website. We've got a special offer for those people who are watching this show. It's drkellyann.com/Dr. Yoon. That's Dr. Kellyann, drkellyann.com /DRYOUN. She's got 3 big free gifts if you purchase her Bone Broth Cookbook. Like I said, highly, highly recommend it. 125 great recipes here.
And it's a great price right now on Amazon too. So
great price. And you get a free book out of it with 30 free recipes, shakes, soups, and cocktails. You get $27.99 credit at her online store. So basically she's paying for the book for you. And on top of that, you get a ticket to her February Bone Broth Revolution, 21-Day Bone Broth Revolution, which is an online exclusive event. We'll go over this again at the end of the show, but I just wanted to bring it up to you guys so far so you kind of know what's going on and where you can learn more about Dr. Kellyann. So, we've kind of talked about that there are 2 kind of main reasons why people have issues losing weight. We talked to them, it's inflammation, it's basically leaky gut. So what have you used as the solution for this?
Yeah.
Is it something that people, it's not, it's 21 days. Anybody can kind of do a 21-day thing. Can you kind of give the gist of it? What does it entail?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let me just say broad scope, broad base before we get into how we figure this out. I just want to add something that after practicing and seeing so many people for so long, if I were to stick all of my patients in a football field and I were to dilute out what got them results, if I were to dilute out what got them whatever vision they had for themselves when they walked into practice or whatever was frustrating them and they figured it out, it's because we did 3 things. We did 3 things together as a team. And that was, number 1, we reduced inflammation. Number 2, we healed the gut. And number 3, we trained their body to become a natural fat burner. And this is really important. So The combination of those three things are what has given my patients the most value. And so every recipe that I've made in the cookbook is it's engineered, it's designed to give you those three things. And so when I talk about foods and I talk about protocols and programs, it has those three things in mind always. How am I going to accomplish those three things with my patients? And so to walk you through the bone broth diet and how we've done that for so many thousands of people now, literally thousands and thousands of people have taken the bone broth challenge. And we get all kind of results, Tony. Email box full all the time, private Facebook page, which anyone's welcome to join once they buy the book. Just so many opportunities. And this is what we do. So 2 non-consecutive days a week, we ask patients to do a bone broth mini fast. And this is something that I've developed. And that is you sip on broth for 2 non-consecutive days a week, and you have 1 light meal at 7 o'clock. And that light meal is just a portion of protein, a portion of a healthy fat, and a fibrous vegetable. So you have those 3 things. And I am telling you, patients are not hungry. They are not uncomfortable. They just did a big study, and they just actually had it on the Today Show, where this whole idea, this intermittent fasting or this type of fasting, how well it actually works. And it works so well at burning stored fat. And if you're really confused on what stored fat is, let me tell you, it's this stuff. It's this stuff. It's the gut, it's the butt, it's the thighs. It pulls that stored stuff that women say, I can't get rid of, and that's why I love it. And there's so many reasons why to embark on this mini fasting. You get the same results if you weren't eating, and you're comfortable. So the problem that they said in the Today Show piece that, this intermittent fasting really works, but you may feel a little uncomfortable. Our reporter that did it was feeling a little uncomfortable. And I thought to myself, gosh, and I've solved that problem. So here's a way to get the same results. We tested it out in 3 cities. You can't just put that on the book, that you lose this kind of weight doing this fasting without actually proving it out. So I had to prove it out. And we saw time and time again, 2 non-consecutive days of this mini fasting, sipping on broth, 1 light meal, really does do a tremendous job at burning stored fat. And then the other 5 days a week, you're eating regular meals. You're eating regular meals with fermented food once a day. I love the concept of really getting in there and having those fermented foods, healing the gut, and you're learning how to build a plate with fat-burning foods. So nobody's hungry. Nobody's missing anything. You're having a handful of berries. You're having some avocado. You're having you're having good proteins. You're having your vegetables. So you're getting it all covered. You're having the sweet potatoes, and you're having all kinds of foods. Squash is one of my favorites, by the way. It's a great way to get energy into your body without getting the calories. It's one of my favorite things. So really the name of the game when you're building a plate and understanding how to eat these fat-burning foods is understand that every plate should have a healthy protein. Every plate should have some kind of vegetable. And here's where people oftentimes slip. They can't get the carb thing right. Because we need carbs, but nobody understands how much carbs and what type of carbs. It's one of the reasons why the book was such a success, because I've really explained this very well to everyone. And that is when you need more energy, and you have to assess, why do I need energy? Is this the carb flu? Is my body switching systems? Is my body switching from being a carb burner to a fat burner? And during that time where you make that shunt, your body's working super hard. You may feel more tired. You may feel a little achy. You may feel like a little fluish for 2 to 4 days. Is that why I'm feeling tired? Or do I really need more food? Because if in fact you need more food, this is what I call personal play, and you get really good at feeling your body out and really understanding what your body's asking for. You'll have sweet potatoes. You'll have squash. You'll have those type of foods that really energize your body. And so it's really learning how to build a plate and adding some fruit in there too to get your brain going and keep that functioning. And it becomes easy.
So the plan then basically is there are certain foods, and I know in the book, in the bone broth cookbook, as well as in your bone broth diet book, that there are certain foods that are good for fat burning, that are good obviously for your health, that will help support your intestinal lining, then there are those obviously that are not good for you. And it's beyond the scope of our podcast, start naming foods, but definitely take a look at her book because it's very straightforward and completely agree with that. And then the idea then behind the bone broth is that for those days you're going to fast, instead of you just sipping water, you're sipping bone broth, which actually will help provide you, number one, without that kind of hungry feeling and the low energy feeling that people get when they're fasting. But on top of that, can you explain what is it in the bone broth that actually does more? Okay, and why people say, well, okay, well, why don't I just eat the foods and skip the bone broth? What does somebody actually get from bone broth that they wouldn't from just sipping, let's say, tea?
Well, I have to say, and that's a great question, I have to say that you have to wonder why. Why, as a doctor, with all the experience I have, and why all the really interesting European modalities, again, and treatment plans that I could be teaching and talking about, why in the world am I talking about bone broth? The reason why I'm talking about something as simple as bone broth is when you see something that works across the board on so many different conditions so well, and has such deep nutrition. As a doctor, you pay attention. When you start seeing it working on so many levels and you get results that are typical, you have a scientific brain and you start thinking, okay, what's happening here? And that's why it really caught my attention. And, I remember being in my 40s and hitting that wall. I remember turning 40, hitting that wall and saying, I'm not getting the same results anymore. What am I missing?
Yep.
Well, you know what? You need a different type of nutrition, a deeper nutrition to walk you through these different turnstiles of life. And that's why I love it so much. It has something in there called collagen. Well, let me be more clear. And that is bone broth helps your body mainline its own collagen. And this is a really beautiful thing. It helps your body build its own natural collagen. And collagen is like the glue that holds us together. So to have that really supple, that really young look, collagen's the guy. Collagen's the guy that gets this done. It keeps your skin really beautiful. It's just really hard to attain from a lot of foods. And this is a wonderful way that you get your body to make collagen through drinking the bone broth. And here's what else is really interesting. We talked about the gut, and we talked about inflammation, and we talked about, I asked you to picture that long tube and picture that red and inflamed. Now, think about this. If you get a sunburn, what do? You reach for aloe vera. You reach for aloe vera because it's going to soothe it, it's going to make you comfortable, and it's going to heal it. Well, think about that 25 feet being inflamed. The collagen, which when it's cooked is gelatin, the jiggly stuff, that acts just like aloe vera to your gut, okay? So it heals, it soothes, it gets that wall lining really tight again. So one of the most wonderful things that you can ever do to look and feel better, and it really is a 1-2 punch. You look and you feel better when you heal the gut. And this gelatin in the bone broth, it does just that. So the collagen, beautiful skin, shiny hair, your hair will get very shiny. Skin, you'll really notice big skin changes. Wrinkles start to fade more. You'll notice a big fading of wrinkles, and your skin feels a little, feels tighter because Botox and all of that, it's great, and a lot of people love it, but you have to realize it concentrates on one area, but you want an overall luster and demeanor that's beautiful. And I love the bone broth to give you that overall sheen and luster and demeanor and really make you look young and beautiful.
It's interesting because my mother has, as long as I remember, basically made her own type of bone broth, where basically they call it bone soup. And her skin is fantastic. And I never made that connection. I just thought, oh, she's making bone soup again. It kind of tastes good. And we grew up kind of, having that at times and stuff. But essentially, she's been making this bone broth pretty much all of her life and has been feeding it to us when I lived back at home at the time. So a question that I have for you that I'm sure you get all the time is I've actually gone pretty much vegetarian the last several months. How can somebody like myself who isn't necessarily eating many animal products, can we get benefits from bone broth? Or is it really, are we kind of unfortunately out of the loop on this one?
I do get asked this all the time. And so what I say is you're not going to get the same benefits that those having beef broth and chicken broth, that you have to realize there's marrow. Okay. So the marrow in the beef broth really is very enriching for the blood and makes the blood very buoyant, very healthy. We want those cells buoyant and bouncy. We don't want them stuck together because that means you're tired.
Yeah.
And that means you're getting sick, and we don't want that. So the marrow is so beautiful at building that. So you don't get that. The protein that's in the broth. I love the protein that's in the broth. It really does make a difference, and it's a great source. And you don't overdo it, because you don't want to overdo animal protein. So let me make that clear. There's a fine line.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between having, I did a lot of cell analysis when I was in college, and we would look at blood, and we'd look at different formations, and we'd look at how protein would affect it. And what I came out with in my studies is that protein, when used in the right amount, is incredibly beneficial. Mm-hmm. When it's not is when we push it over the edge and we get too much.
Exactly.
That's the fine line. And what I love so much about the broth is you're getting just enough. Mm-hmm. You're getting just enough. You're not overdoing it and really creating that proteinuria and all those situations and problems that we don't want.
Interesting enough, too, in your book, I know you go over the fact that there are certain parts, certain bones and body parts that actually do better for broth, like feet, which, I mean...
If you can handle this, if you can handle the grossness of the feet, I'm telling you, whenever there's cartilage and you get a lot of the gelatin and the knuckles, it really is filled with all of those things that, and everyone has to understand, I certainly didn't invent bone broth. Bone broth has been around since the hunter-gatherer times, when they used to literally heat stones and put them in the intestinal pockets of the animals and make broths. It was around, Florence Nightingale days. They would bring the soups to the hospitals for the invalids and so forth. So there's been many uses over history and over time. That broth, heating on the cauldron, it goes way back. And the reason why is because it's so sustainable, using it all parts of the animal, and also the deep healing that you do get. I mean, there's minerals in there, and where so many of us are so mineral deficient. Mm-hmm. One of the big problems that I had when I used to do spectra cells all the time, and I would analyze all of this in the body, it really, as you know, and I don't know if your audience has learned this yet, but vitamin D, I mean, most of us are low in vitamin D. Yeah. It really is a pandemic. I mean, everyone is low in vitamin D. I rarely see anyone who's on target. And minerals are another thing. Minerals are something that we really need to focus more on. And so I love the broth with the amino acids that are very upbuilding. It's a very upbuilding element to get, and also the minerals. So you've got protein, you've got minerals, you've got the collagen and the gelatin, and you've got the marrow, and you've got just a beautiful, warm, that soothes you down to your toes. It's comforting. And what's interesting is, because of the glycine in there, it's a great antioxidant, and it helps you go to sleep. So not only does it help you sleep better, it also gives you a shot of energy.
Yep.
It's like one of those oxymoron things. Yeah. So it helps you sleep better at night, because your body is getting all of the nutrition that it needs, and it also helps bring you alive. In the afternoon, a lot of people they'll have a cup of bone broth instead of that second cup of coffee, and you sleep better at night because you're getting that nutrition. And this, that one of the most important things that you can do nutritionally for your body is, you almost want to confuse it in a way such as this. You want to pull all the toxins out, and you want to flood the nutrition into the cells. That's the pathway. Right? That's the pathway to get what you want. You've got to pull the toxins out of the cells and push the nutrition in. So your cells almost become confused, like they're not searching for things all the time. You're not hungry all the time. You reach satiety. Your body feels calm, and it's got what it needs. It's when your body doesn't have what it needs, when it's literally starving for nutrients, that you start thinking crazy, acting crazy, searching for food, grabbing all the sugar. And stress is another thing. We have to really maintain our stress levels, because those catecholamines, all of those stress hormones, they really drive us much in the same way to start grabbing sugar and to start grabbing bad fats, because we want good fats. My book talks about good fats, not bad fats. So all of these things are really important. And the broth really is a good starting point for anyone who says, this year I want to make a change. You know what? And Dr. Kellyann, I think you're great, but I can't do that diet. And I say, okay, even if you can't do the diet, start drinking the broth. Yep. Start drinking the broth, because that's going to make a difference. And if you're a vegetarian, don't feel frustrated, because what you can do, and it's on my website, you'll see it on my website, vegetable broths do a lot for you. They mineralize the body beautifully. One of the best things that I tell people is, when they want to do some kind of detox, I always say the same thing. everyone uses that word detox all the time. And what I say is, instead of worrying about focusing on this deep detox, how about this? How about if you don't eat foods with a barcode for 21 days? How about that? How about if, instead of, unless it's produce that has some, barcode, but if you don't eat packaged foods for 21 days, try that. Add some bone broth into it. So I'm not asking anyone to make this hard. Do whatever you can to make this easy. I mean, that's really important. Try to make this easy. I understand the practicality side of this. This is the difference between a clinician saying this and someone who's not been in the trenches, so to speak, and hear the plight of people. I know it's hard. I know it's busy. I have children. I work a full schedule, and I understand the demands and the dilemmas. And my job, I'm the solutions business. I consider myself a doctor that's here to create solutions, not make it harder for you. And one of the best ways that you can really get powerful nutrition is by adding bone broth. And one of the most powerful ways that you can lose weight is by using bone broth in your arsenal with these mini fasting.
So to kind of summarize what we've gone over is the enemies really for weight loss are inflammation and this leaky gut. And the leaky gut definitely leads to inflammation, which creates more weight gain. There's a lot of the foods that really cause a lot of this inflammation. So by checking out Dr. Kellyan's book, the Bone Broth Cookbook, highly recommend it. This is something that I have read. I've read her first one as well. A lot of great recipes in there. But it's a combination, I think, of eating the right foods. And shockingly, those foods are not foods that taste horrible. I kind of mentioned a few of them before, the bacon wrapped chicken tenders, the fish and chips. There's chocolate banana cupcakes with almond butter frosting. But combining prudent eating with the bone broth, you get the gelatin that turns into collagen. It's healing for the gut. And so it may, if you think about it, you may say, well, geez, it's so much of a change for me. It's actually not. And when you actually look at the foods that she recommends, these are not odd foods that you can only buy at specialty stores. I mean, these are things that you can buy at your regular grocery store. You combine that with the bone broth. Now, one question that I have is, I'm all into easy, quick fixes and ways around, to truly, I know when my mom made her bone soup and bone broth, I mean, this was like an all-day affair. What about somebody like me who says, look, I don't have time to break up all the knuckles and to go searching around for the pig's feet or the chicken feet. What can somebody like me do where I say, look, can I just get it real quick instead of me, let's say, making a cup of coffee in the evening, especially now when it's so cold in Michigan? Instead, how can I get a cup of bone broth but not have to go through all that preparation?
Well, I actually found a great solution. And so let me answer that two ways. Number one, I will tell you that I do sell very high quality broth on my website, drkellyann.com. And there are other places that you can buy it as well. I could not have said this a year ago. A year ago, there really wasn't the availability of getting high quality. I couldn't give my stamp of approval. Now there are quite a few places, in addition to my own place online, drkellyann.com. But I also created, and this was definitely hearing the needs of you and other patients, I've created something called Slim Collagen Broth. And this broth is very simple and easy. All you do is you take the packet with you and you rip the packet open and you put it in a mug with some hot water and you're good to go. So that's one of the shortcuts. I love shortcuts. And this is a very, very well done product in terms of the quality of ingredients, because that's very important to me.
Before we finish, is there a difference between grass-fed beef, let's say, that you make bone broth with, pasture-raised or free-range chickens versus grain-fed and factory farmed?
Yeah. You have to think about it always like this. You have to step into the common sense corner of your brain. So everyone wants to spend less, and I understand that. And what I tell mothers and I tell patients and just in general is do what you can, because eating the broth is so much better than most of the foods that we're going to eat. But be honest with yourself about financial allocations, because if you can afford the pasture raised and if you can afford organic, it really does serve you better, because the health of that animal transfers. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There is a transference there.
And the science is totally supporting all of that as well.
Clear as a bell.
Yeah.
Clear as a bell. So what I say is, so many people will say, oh, but I can't afford that. And I'll say, well, you know what? You're better off not getting a manicure and spending it on this. I promise you, I've seen people at the end of the road, at the end of their life. I've heard the regrets. I've heard the stories. I am telling you, to really have a beautiful life, be honest with yourself about the allocations and know what's going to get you further. And a lot of times spending your money on things like pasture raised, there's things that you can shortcut on spending money on food. And there's things that you probably shouldn't. And beef and meat and all that is one of those probably shouldn'ts.
So last question that I ask all of my guests, and I actually haven't prepared you for this one, so I apologize in advance, but it's not that hard. So the show is called Look, Live, and Be Better. Is there something one thing that you could think of that you would recommend? Obviously, we've talked about bone broth, but for our listeners and our viewers, that you would recommend after doing this for as long as you have, by treating thousands of patients, by helping them with their weight loss, one thing that you would say that somebody should think of doing if they want to look, live, and be better?
Yeah, you have to really understand the whole concept of mindset and really have good mindset strategies along with all of this. I talked about, and I always kind of squeeze it in, even if it doesn't make sense to squeeze it in, about the whole stress thing, about the catecholamines, and because I want people to understand that sometimes we make food and things such a focus when really stress will take you down all day, every day over anything else. It really does kill us. So what I say is, in order to avoid all of that, you really have to appreciate and understand what things like gratitude, and it seems like such an oversimplification, understand really feeling gratitude every day. Have a morning ritual in which you really speak to yourself about gratitude. So watch the words that you tell yourself. The 6 inches between your ears are very important. So just be very mindful of your self-talk, because that is the overhanging fruit, my friends, to everything. Yeah. Everything we discussed is an important foundation, but the overhanging fruit is the 6 inches between our ears, because what you do for a living, how much money you make, where you vacation, where you went to school, it's so secondary. People are who they are, and they are where they are because of the way they think. So pick up some books or keep yourself motivated and let's get those positive energy. Just get it flowing through you all the time. It's very attractive to people. It's very attractive. If you want to know, why someone can attract so many people in their circle all the time, they just have that energy, that essence. It's because you have to learn things like, I call it next. And when something comes to my mind and it's negative, I get it out. I don't live in it. I don't dwell in it. You have to learn skills. I teach all of this in the book. In my bone broth diet book, I have this at the end of the book. All of these things, like, be careful who you let in your life, because it's much easier to let them in than it is to get them out. So have an inner doorman. Have values. Be principled. And don't let other people in that don't have those values and principles. All these little things. And we were talking about food, but these things, these mental skills are just as important.
Well, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank you.
I'm proud to call you my friend, and I'm so happy you came on the show. If you're interested in more about Dr. Kellyann, I strongly encourage you to check out her book, Dr. Kellyan's Bone Broth Cookbook, 125 recipes. You'd be really surprised at just how great a lot of these recipes taste, how indulgent they can be. At the same time, not only are you going to give your taste buds a great treat, but you're also going to help to heal that inflammation. Strongly encourage you to check out our website. We do have a special offer for people who watch and listen to this podcast. Go to drkellyann.com/Dr. Youn, D-R-Y-O-U-N. That's drkellyann.com/Dr. Youn, D-R-Y-O-U-N. And she has a special offer where if you do purchase her book, she'll give you $27.99. Basically, the cost of the book for her online store, where you can even get that Slim Broth to go, which is fantastic. And I brought that up because I am a big fan of that as well. And you can get a free copy of a 10-10-10, 30 more free recipes. On top of that, you can get a free ticket to her 2017 Bone Broth Revolution. So this is an online event that you can have exclusive access to. I'm a huge fan of yours, Kellyann. I'm so proud of everything that you've done and all the people that you have helped. I'm so glad that I'm able to help share your message too. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And you're one terrific human being and doctor. And I'm so glad you're in my life. Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for watching Look, Live, and Be Better. I'm Dr. Anthony Youn, America's holistic plastic surgeon. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Do you want to look 10 years younger without having surgery? Well, my best-selling book, The Age Fix, will tell you how. I spent the past 17 years learning the secrets to turning back the clock, and have written all the best of these secrets in this book. This includes the age-fixed diet, simple changes to what you eat that can make a huge difference in your appearance. I'll share with you a simple skincare routine to keep aging and wrinkles at bay. And I'll share with you the best secrets to treat every single beauty and aging problem there is, from age spots to wrinkles, saggy skin to bad breath, saddlebags to hair loss. And almost all of these can be effectively treated without surgery. So are you ready to turn back the clock and kick Father Time's backside? If so, check out the Age Fix. Now, if you purchase it on my website, dryoun.com, you'll get over $10 off the cover price, free shipping, and you'll receive several free gifts, including a bonus chapter that you can only get by purchasing the book there. Thank you for making the Age Fix such a huge success.